Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Griffith, I'm compelled to ask you if the Holman rule, as currently applied, has it worked? Has it actually rescinded spending in a particular area? I appreciate that it's been around since 1876.
There have been, I would say, a half dozen, maybe a dozen, somewhere between a half dozen and a dozen times when it has worked. One of those actually went to the Supreme Court, I want to say about 1940, give or take a couple of years, and the Supreme Court upheld that this was proper within, proper process within the House.
Well, I also think it's an important tool that would return power to the people who are supposed to represent their districts. And it's been a shame that we haven't had it available. I recognize that it's sometimes difficult to, it's unwieldy, but at the same time, that's probably for a purpose as well. I do have to say, and I completely agree with Tom, with ranking member on the ratios on the committee. I mean, it was offensive to me, and you remember this. We sat through those reconciliation bills in committee, dutifully listening and holding the votes, and we'd lose. The majority in the committee was 6 votes. The majority on the floor was 5 votes. And that was always particularly disturbing to me. Not that we would have won any more votes, but how could there be a greater proportion on the committee than there was on the floor of the House? And I do think that is something that really should be given some consideration. As far as the number of people on the Rules Committee, Mr. Chairman, if I remember correctly, Sam Rayburn, when he was Speaker, actually enlarged the Rules Committee. He wanted to replace some Democrats on the Rules Committee, but his conference wouldn't permit that. So he expanded the Rules Committee in order to overcome the no votes of his recalcitrant Democrat members who are going to stand in the way of JFK's rather progressive agenda that he was going to institute after the 1960 election. And it was a very close vote on the floor to change the ratio. So I guess we could have that discussion, but as we kind of sit here on the dawn of the next Congress, I rather like the 9-4 ratio. It has a certain appeal to it. Just an observation for you. But I do think we really ought to pay attention to the ratios on committee. You're right. If the people at home knew what was actually taking place, they would be concerned that there could be such an imbalance of power when the people spoke and elected representatives in a certain proportion. The committees actually should reflect that.
And while we haven't been perfect and we've never had a rule, I will say that it has, over the last decade or so, it has gotten worse historically. Over decades and centuries, Congress has been pretty close on the committees, maybe off by one person. It's only within the last decade or so that we've started to get away from that, which is why I feel that it's important that we start to put it in the rules and codify that that's what we're shooting for.
Well, I thank both of you for your participation today. It's going to be a long day, so, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.